Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Ben Data, co-chair of DSW. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. This community has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade, and this week we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors, whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors, who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible. Founder Track, Kickstart, Growth Track, Friday Health Plans, Developer Track, Quizlet, Product Track, Palantir, Designer Track, Battery 621 in the Public Works, People Track, Exactly, and Spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement this week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing Company, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, Gusto, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pine Insurance, Promontory Mortgage Path, Red Bull Basement, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget to use hashtag #DenStartupWeek to share your experience and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Welcome to this session of Denver Startup Week. I'm Serene Pappenfuss, a principal at Kickstart Fund. We're on a mission to build great companies in the Wild West by backing the boldest entrepreneurs with capital, community, and expertise for the journey. A lot of VCs happen to invest in Colorado. At Kickstart, we focus on it. We love our Colorado startups, Sondermind, Nomad, Pomp, and Havenly, just to name a few. Because we were among the first seed funds in the region, we know what it's like to start something before others understand your vision, which means we're willing to lead investments in promising teams. We use our experiences to grow your startup and recruit top talent. Our portfolio is filled with visionary founders like you who are committed to moving the whole ecosystem together. It's the network effect in full effect. Raising venture capital is more than swapping shares for money. It's inviting the right investors to complement your team. We hope we'll be your choice for seed funding in the Mountain West, and we hope you enjoy this session.
Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, or the combination of those identities. There's something for everyone at DSW, thanks to all of our community members who submitted their best content to make this week what it is. And thank you for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep DSW free and accessible for all, especially our founder track sponsor, Kickstart. With that, please enjoy this session and the entire week ahead.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this Thursday afternoon. We're really excited to be in community with you today. My name is Sasha Green. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the program and operations manager here at Moonshot edVentures. And we're just really excited that you decided to join the Moonshot community this afternoon for our session on disrupting and creating new systems and what it looks like to launch innovative programs in schools as BIPOC women and non-binary leaders. So we're going to start off by just telling you a little bit about what Moonshot edVentures is and the work that we do. And then we're going to jump into a panel discussion, and you'll get to hear from 4 amazing entrepreneurs. And you'll get to hear specifically how these leaders are disrupting and creating systems as Black, Indigenous, people of color, women, and non-binary leaders. And you'll hear about their experiences as diverse entrepreneurs launching ventures in Metro Denver. So again, we're gonna jump into finding out a little bit about who's in the room in just a second. Then I'll run through what is Moonshot, what's our approach to developing our founders through the Moonshot Fellowship. And then you'll get to hear from Moonshot Fellows directly. That's really gonna be the fun part. Through a panel discussion, we'll share out some reflections in the chat, and then that'll be our time. So who's in the room? I would really love if folks could throw in the chat your name and why you chose to be here today. Hey, Hunter, thanks for starting us off. See some Moonshot Fellows joined us today. I'll give us like 30 seconds if folks wanna chat in to the panelists or to the whole group, just who you are and why you chose to join our session. While we wait, I'm shamelessly sipping coffee at 2 p.m. All right, we've got Mindy here supporting one of our panelists. Hey, Sophia, good to see you. Moonshot alumni. Welcome, Chrissy. We're excited to share about what we're doing locally. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, Amanda, also here supporting some folks. Awesome. Well, thanks again to everyone. I'm just so excited that you took time out of your day to be with us. Before we get started with an intro about Moonshot, I have to share the other leaders who make our programming and operations happen at Moonshot Adventures. They make the Moonshot magic a reality. So Kat Ling is our interim CEO. You already know me, I'm the program and operations manager. Alex Chavez is our finance and operations manager, and BJ Brown is our program manager. So big shout out to the Moonshot team. None of this work would be possible without them. So what is Moonshot Adventures? So first of all, Moonshot was founded back in 2016 by our founder, Christine De Leon, who some of you might know as CDL. And really Moonshot was built on the belief that everyone has some inherent potential to create something new and something beautiful and to be their own entrepreneur. And oftentimes our institutions, the way that they are set up, aren't doing the work to actually build relationships with communities and to even ask them what are their hopes and dreams and what do they want to create for their community to better their community. So Moonshot was created really to solve two problems. The first problem is that our students of color are drastically underperforming our white students here in Denver. And if we continue to do more of the same and abide by the status quo, then that gap will continue to grow. So in this chart, you can see the percentage of students who are performing proficient or above grade level. And you can see that that line of white student performance is way higher than the performance of our Black and Latinx students. And so we know that students in DPS, that gap will continue to grow for our students of color, and those students of color will continue to fall further behind if we don't change the way we do things. The second problem that Moonshot aims to solve is that although 75% of students in Denver are students of color, 75% of the teaching force is white. And so you can actually see in the graph on the right that according to the CDE, although the teaching force continues to grow each year, the diversity of that teaching force is not changing. So we really need to transform the experiences that students of color are having in the classroom. And Moonshot believes that we should do that by finding leaders that can empathize with the experiences underrepresented students have in our classrooms. And so oftentimes, since our leadership doesn't match the diversity of our students, Moonshot tries to actually find the leaders who can dream up what education should become and what new learning environments look like, And we work with them on developing and launching that. We give them the tools, the community, the resources, and the access needed to make those dreams a reality. And that means that we have to be doing work to really create deeper connections with communities who are not typically at the table, and asking those communities, who do you want to open a new learning environment, and what does that look like? So that's where Moonshot comes in. Moonshot edVentures, so our vision is that we create a learner-centered system led by individuals who share and empathize with the experience of the students and communities they aim to serve, where all children become lifelong learners who persist through life and meaningfully contribute to their communities. And we do that through our mission to service and support a diverse set of leaders to design and launch the schools and learning environments of tomorrow. All of this work we do is grounded in our core values: respect, trust, love, collaboration, equity, and pay it forward. So this is our theory of change. So we believe that if we invest in a set of local, underrepresented leaders and support them to develop models that look dramatically different, then we can transform outcomes for underserved students traditionally marginalized by our education system. It's a myth to believe that there are not BIPOC or women or non-binary leaders who want to open a program or a school or some kind of new learning environment. And the reality is that in the way our systems are built, we haven't really looked hard enough. And so Moonshot really focuses on looking local for local leaders who are looking to serve their communities. So these are a few pieces that really make up the Moonshot way and how we think about our approach to developing leaders. So again, we invest in local underrepresented leadership, and we help build connections both between members of each cohort, between our alumni network, as well as between other people in the ecosystem who are going to be vital to supporting the launch of our fellows. We typically find leaders who are 2 to 3 years out from launch to really develop their leadership, help them build out and hone their model design, and then help them identify a pathway to launch. However, that doesn't mean that folks who have already founded can't benefit from the work that we do. We support leaders in a range of places from launch. All of our fellows pilot before opening. And so we really make sure fellows are equipped with the data and the information that they need from the students and families that they aim to serve directly. And this is just another way to look at sort of like the tenets of our programming for the Moonshot Fellowship. So finding and supporting new leaders at the right time, whatever that time might be. Building community locally and nationally. We have more than 80 facilitators who come in to support our programming. And our leaders, it's vital that our leaders co-create with students and families as well. Our access to content is, we create a curriculum that fellows have to come to workshops about 1 night per week, 1 weekend per month, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but we really focus on leadership development, model design, and then help the fellows identify an appropriate pathway to launch. So a little bit more about our programming. So these are the 3 stages of the Moonshot Fellowship. We start with the explore stage, and in the explore stage, that's where we accept up to 15 to 20 leaders. It's a part-time program where we're really diving into developing your leadership, building community, and you start kind of piloting your idea. The beautiful thing about our fellowship is that if you start in the explore stage, you're not required to launch something. You're not even required to move on to the other stages. We really try to tailor the stages of the fellowship to make sure that it's supportive for what leaders need at that time. That's where that pathways to launch piece comes in, where we're really looking for how can we make sure that we're supporting the development of this leader, whether that's through a venture or otherwise. So in the explore stage, it's a 3.5-month commitment, and we really allow folks to explore their ideas. They come to workshops, again, 1 night per week, 1 weekend per month, and we're really helping you to become a better leader in that time. Based on your readiness and commitment, if you want to move forward, you can continue to pilot your idea through the cultivate stage, and that's from January to May typically. And after the cultivate stage, if you decide again that you want to move forward to prepare for launch, you have the opportunity to do longer pilots to make sure that you're gathering a lot of data to build out your idea. All of the stages of the fellowship provide multiple supports in building out these different buckets for entrepreneurs. So leadership development, model design, pathways to launch, really building a community of practice, both within your cohort and within our network. And we provide access to national and local connections in order to make sure each of our fellows is successfully equipped to found their program or school. All right, now it's time for the really fun part. I am so excited to introduce our Moonshot Fellow panel. You all are going to get the chance to actually hear from folks who went through our programming and have founded something since then. So this group of brilliant leaders is here because each of these leaders has navigated the journey of launching something while holding true to their identities. And I'm really excited to elevate their experiences and the knowledge that they've gained about what it looks like to navigate systems that weren't built with us in mind, in service of the communities that we aim to serve. So I'm gonna ask our panelists to share your name, your pronouns, and a little bit about your venture. I'm gonna stop sharing and let's kick it to Tatenda.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tatenda, blessing Muchiriri, and my pronouns are he, him, his. And I'm the co-founder of Flemley Montessori School with Anna Saladon, and also the co-founder of Montessori on Wheels with Amanda Heyer. And my venture really is to bring Montessori to Black and Brown communities, make it more accessible in ways that haven't been done before, like literally bringing Montessori to them rather than expecting them to come to a school, but giving that awareness and that exposure and tapping into their wisdom first with what they know to be true about how their children learn, and then seeing how that resonate with the Montessori ways of guiding that learning. And I'm excited to be here.
Hey, everybody, I'm Amanda Gonzalez. I use she, her pronouns. I am a proud Indigenous Chicana from Denver, Colorado. I'm the co-founder and school leader at Be the Change Community School. We are a high school focused on revolutionary confidence, identity, community, and civic engagement. We're currently in year 00, so we're in our piloting stage, and we're running pilots at Denver North High School this year. We will open in Commerce City in the 23-24 school year. I'm also a school launcher resident with Moonshot edVentures. This is a full-time residency that really supports myself and my co-founder in supporting innovative leaders in developing educational programs, right? We're all starting schools right now. I'm sitting in the Moonshot office because on Thursdays, I get to hang out here and just completely focus on the school. So excited to be with y'all.
I'll go, yeah. Hey, everyone, I'm Bre. I use all pronouns. I'm the founder of Joya's Resistance, which is a mobile mental health clinic for LGBTQ plus youth in the Denver metro area and across Colorado. We have 3 major parts of our programming. One is our individual and counseling services, which are about to start taking place on the ambulance that we have renovated into being a mobile clinic to reduce any transportation barriers. We also do school and nonprofit partnership around PDs, GSA startup, different things for inclusive practices around LGBTQ and queer students. And then we also just launched our mentorship program called Big Queer, Little Queer, where we match adult LGBTQ folks with queer young people to really grow their social capital and meet folks like them who are older and doing things in the world.
Love it. My name is TeRay Esquibel. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Ednium, the Alumni Collective. Where at a very basic level, we're looking to build the infrastructure for public school alumni to live and lead in the city that educated them, and then use that newfound capacity to make tangible and relevant change to the school system. At the end of the day, we work with DPS alumni, Denver Public Schools, currently located in Denver, 30 and under, with the really deep belief that people who are experiencing the consequences of what they did or didn't learn in their K-12 education have pretty unique and unimpeachable insight into what could have helped them, and that we recognize that, you know, we have an opportunity to change the game. Appreciate being here.
Y'all, such a cool group of people are in here right now. I am so excited. I'm already inspired. Obviously, I know what you do, but I hope that folks are super excited to hear from the wealth of knowledge and experiences in here today. So let's jump in. I'm gonna start with a question around knowing that you have chosen to be in spaces that are oftentimes dominated by whiteness, primarily white, cis, heterosexual males typically, who often aren't the ones who have the competence, resources, and access to do what they do. And so knowing that those are the spaces you're navigating with people who hold that privilege, what makes it particularly challenging and empowering to be an entrepreneur given your identity? And I'm gonna start with Amanda.
This is such an interesting question, right? Because this is like everything that I navigate all day, every day. And really it makes me think about when I first stepped into becoming an assistant principal. And so this is my 25th year of working with young people. And I've had quite a journey. I've been a high school principal, like it's just a long journey. But my first year of being an assistant principal, I was charged with coaching a teacher. He was a white cishet male who had been teaching for like 8 years, right? And so like this dude knew it all, right? And I remember stepping in and being like, I don't know how to coach him. I'm new to, not to education, but I'm new to being an AP. Like, what am I supposed to bring to this table? And was really struggling with that. And I remember mentioning that to one of my coaches, and she sat me down and just looked me in the eye and was like, Amanda, he needs you. He needs your perspective. He needs your experience. He needs your expertise. And I think I just really needed to hear that and be told that from somebody to make me realize and to support like that I bring something to the table. I think for me also, it started off the process of really identifying my strengths and then operating in my strengths so that I could continue to make an impact, right? And so I think for me, particularly challenging and still empowering as an entrepreneur, I think of that still like, right, like I have to operate in my strengths. What are the balconies in the basement of my strengths? And I have to bring that to the table constantly. And it's both empowering because I'm sure you can ask my husband and he gets to see like the basement of my strengths, right? But he also gets to see the balcony of that. And it's cool because my home life, my work life, my every aspect of my life, like there's people that I get to be models for, but also people that I'm like, they get to see like the not so cool parts of me, right? And that's empowering to me to continuously grow and to continuously just want to impact people. So that's just what that makes me think of.
Thanks, Amanda, for starting us off. I'm gonna call on TeRay to kind of expand, and anyone can feel free to jump in. Like, how do you think about your identity as an entrepreneur? What are the challenges? And when do you feel empowered in these spaces that weren't built with us in mind?
Yeah, I think about it in pretty simple ways, like where we live. whatever I walk into is going to be dominated by the dominant culture. And so when I feel more free now than I think I ever did, going off and trying to do my own thing. Now, where the challenge is that as somebody who's always fought the system and grew up with authority issues, there's a piece of you saying like, all right, now you can't just talk about it, you got to be about it. And so it's really this like constant evaluation around, as I'm building systems, what am I putting in place? Am I really doing things in a way that like I needed to be for them to be done for me? And then also a constant evaluation of like, you can't just do things that are going to make you feel good. It's not just you no more, right? And so as much as we build the things for ourselves so we can have a kind of control over the outcome and the process, what you start to learn very quickly is that leadership is more about being able to provide context and those equitable structures for people to be able to become leaders themselves. A mentor of mine always talks about context over control. And that's the exact thing that we're trying to fight against, right? But it's the challenging piece is, how do you build structures? How do you become the authority or not, right? While at the same time, knowing that you're specifically building this to push back against the traditional norms. And that's just the constant process. And hopefully you got mentors, hopefully you got people that you're working with, hopefully you're very clear in terms of who you're responsible to. And that's the people that you serve. And hopefully you build a good enough relationship where they check you when you're tripping, and that you have enough humility and enough of a growth mindset to hear that and then go do something about it. So that's what it means at the end of the day.
Yeah, thank you, Sasha, for that question. It's real, right? I'm thinking like just myself every day, waking up and identifying as a Montessori teacher. It's more like identifying with the whiteness, right? Because people, when they think about Montessori, what they know about Montessori, it's all about, an education that is really for the affluent, that is centered in whiteness, and that is so Eurocentric. So that's one thing that I really navigate and work with every day. And one thing that's coming to me right now, as you asked that question, was how interesting, even now, that people still ask me the question of, how did you discover Montessori? And mostly it's not so much about the curiosity, it's so much about what in this world an African man from Zimbabwe teaching Montessori in the United States. So there's that trying to find out where's the connection here, because they don't see it that way as something that's ours. When I think of Montessori and the way that I show up, to also answer a question on how I navigate that, is being able to really share Montessori and show up in the way that it really resonates with who I am, being an African man from Africa, from Zimbabwe, and the way I interpret that pedagogy that really focuses on the whole body learning of the child and the knowledge that we know about how children learn best. So that's one thing that I have sort of like embraced in a way of empowering myself, that when I walk into those spaces, when I walk into any conversation about Montessori, I'm not sharing the same story that I was exposed to through my training, that I was exposed to through the schools that I worked in, around the world, but what really brought me to Montessori, what happened when I sort of like discovered Montessori in a way that brought me back to how I grew up in Zimbabwe, in Harare, with my 5 brothers, with my neighbors, with everybody in the community, that idea of really being together and learning together for each other. So I think what really has given me strength is having that knowledge that when I walk into that room, they're really for me. They want to hear my perspective, which is also hard because I'm bringing something that's very different. Like, with the work that I do, is really taking back education into the hands of our people, because most of this was really, if anything, stolen from us. It's something that we have practiced for years, pre-colonial times, Indigenous people, Black people, Latinx people. So we know this to be something that's ours, but the way that then it was sort of introduced in the American education system, in a way of commercializing it, make it more white-centric, US-centric. It's sort of like pushed our people back to a way where we now talk about bringing Montessori to Black communities or brown communities when we're not bringing anything, honestly. We're just bringing what they know. So how are we partnering with them so that we, if anything, tap into their ancient wisdom and capitalize on that as we really empower parents and children on how they learn. So the struggle is real, but also I think knowing who I am, right? Like this is Tatenda from Zimbabwe, I'm an African man, and then really sticking to that so that I'm not so much a product of what I became after I was trained to be a Montessori teacher.
That was all so amazing. I'm so excited to be here with you all. I think for me, what I'm hearing from other people too is this like theme of community and really feeling like you have to both fit into like the communities that you care about and also challenge a lot of communities that you're not as familiar with or that are can be kind of out of reach or hard to access. And I definitely resonate with that. I think I hold a lot of identities. Some of them have privilege, some of them have aspects of oppression, and to be able to show up every day and know that I'm not doing this work by myself, that I should never do this work by myself, that I could never do this work by myself, helps me to really navigate those different aspects of my identity, because I have people, like what TeRay was saying, who will call me on things. Many of the people on this panel have been, like everybody on this panel has been a part of Joyous Resistance's story at one point or another, because the communities are what makes, I think, these types of ventures successful or not successful. So that's the only thing I would add to what was already said.
Thanks, everyone. Bre, I'm so glad you brought up that idea of community, because I was kind of hearing that in what everyone was saying about being able to stay connected to what it is that your community needs and wants. And like Tatenda, yes, to all of the actual like reclaiming of your community's story and use of Montessori. But all of what you all said made me think of just this idea of like, as you try to stay grounded in the community that you're trying to serve and the community that you're from, while also trying to disrupt and navigate these communities and spaces that weren't made for you. Like, how do you still show up authentically in the work that you do? And do you compromise that a little bit for the sake of being able to do the work for your community? What does that look like for you?
I'll jump on that. So 5 years into my work in the United States, when I moved here 7 years ago, I used to make the headlines at a school, right? The first, male teacher working with toddlers, the first African man. Like, I was meant to feel special, to feel unique, right? And it sort of made me feel comfortable. Like I stayed in that, thinking that, wow, these are the opportunities, right? Is that what the American dream is? Interesting, because I was on the website, I was in these newsletters, I was just like, what the head of school would be, sharing with the communities and the, and the parents. And it so happened that I woke up thinking about, why me? Why only me? It can't be that I'm the only, right, in Denver. I started thinking about just like my immediate, environment. And I then realized that indeed the system makes you feel, lucky, so that in a way you're comfortable. So in a way you sort of feel like you're blended in, right? But I think really then going back to like, when I wake up every day to do this work, I think of the people that I carry with me that are there for me every time, right? For me, it could be just my family, right? That what they saw in me, that they trusted me and gave me the permission to, do this work, made me think that I need to go back to that. I need to go back and be, responsible and accountable for what they expect me to be when I show up in the circles, even if I'm the only person there, but who's writing the story of me, right? Am I the one writing that newsletter? Am I the one, identifying myself in that website? Because then again, it's somebody identifying me, somebody sharing my story. It's been really work itself, trying to stay true in a system that really doesn't identify with you as you try to disrupt and sort of create new systems. Because honestly, I think it was Audre Lorde who said you cannot destroy the master source with the same tools, right? So you really have to think about new ways of bringing a new system that works. And for me, it was just like the realization that I can't keep working in these spaces where it's only white children, white parents, white administration. And we need to create, spaces of learning for Montessori that's really, with Black parents, with brown parents, with BIPOC parents in it. But yeah, you're right. It's always that trying to navigate and make that balance as you try to make it work at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple like tangible things that I would do. This like necklace. My mother-in-law gave me this necklace from Mexico. Like, if I'm in the room, if I'm in the room, my people are in the room. That's what I'll say. Like, I don't really switch up. Sometimes to my own demise, right? I will say though, if I got into the room being me, like me should be good enough to represent what I represent in this room. And I think it's a really interesting thing when we talk about like assets is, all these in some of these boardrooms, and I'll just say some stuff that from a conversation I heard at a barbecue from old dude down the block, right? And he's giving me his wisdom and the information. I say it, and they think I'm the smart one. I ain't doing nothing but regurgitating the things that I know that people hold true, that this boardroom don't necessarily have access to. And the thing that allowed me to be able to kind of, I guess, walk with that confidence. I remember back in college, feeling that type of pressure in a lot of ways. And me talking to my uncle saying like, look, I'm gonna transfer schools. I'm sitting next to a kid whose dad is a senator and et cetera, et cetera. I think we've all had that experience. And what he told me was like, yo, look, like you've experienced more in like your 16, 17 years than a lot of people do in a lifetime. And that's access to information that they'll never have. So like you actually have like look at your past as an asset in that way, and it's not something that you go and get a credential for. Some of the stuff that you've had to overcome, and so once I started thinking that way and bringing, the voice of the people that I'm trying to represent everywhere you go, I'm more concerned with being able to go back to the neighborhood and look my people in their eye. Even if it don't work out, and say, yo, look, like I try to hold it down for us and this is why it didn't work out, rather than being successful and saying I switched up. Again, like the people that I'm responsible to are the people I'm seeking to serve first and last. And we try to ride it out from there.
TeRay, it's interesting as you were talking about like sitting next to like, the senator's kid or whatever, like it actually made me think about like in high school, you were uncool if you were smart, right? And so I remember having to hide that part of me because I want to be cool. And I remember like playing dumb or like purposely not doing my work or not answering the teacher's questions because I wanted my peers to accept who I was. And so in so many ways that actually, I think, poured over into like my young adulthood, right? And like where making myself small was almost like this protective factor. But yet inside, I was like, just busting out, right? Like I couldn't do it anymore. And so I think about like the question in terms of just showing up as your true authentic self. Do you compromise that? I was unable to show up as my true authentic self for a lot of my life. And I had to learn about myself, and like I had to learn, like, who am I? What are my values, right? What does authentic even mean, right? And so I had to learn about that in order for me just to finally be able to bust out and be like, I am smart and I can do some things. And despite whatever society might say that I can't do, or I can't navigate some spaces, I can. Because TeRay, like to your point, like I showed up, I got into this space like this. This is who I am. Here we are. Let's do some things. And I think that even moving now and moving forward, it's still about like, how do I make sure that I'm real with myself and with others about what I can and cannot do. And there's some things I just can't do. There's some things I just don't want to do, right? But there's a lot that I can do. And just showing up in that way, to me, is showing up authentically.
I think building on that, how you show up authentically is going to change every day, or it does for me, because I am not the same person every day. Besides the fact that I wear wigs, like that's not, that's like for real. Like I show up differently in different times, based on what I'm going through at home, based on, what's happening in my professional life, other spaces. And so to almost act like I am great and perfect and happy all the time, even though that's maybe what other folks would want to see, is a way that I think is challenging to the system to truly show up authentically, especially when you're not doing well, or things are a mess, or you're not sure what to answer or what the next step is. And so doing that and saying, yeah, as a leader, you can actually stand up and say you don't know what the next step is or what's happening next, and to feel like power and groundedness come from that space, I think resonates a lot with me. I do think that with what TeRay was saying, like if the door is open, I'm going to show up as my authentic self. I haven't seen a ton of me like doing different things to get into spaces. If the spaces aren't ready for like what I have to say and what Joy is Resistance is about, then I don't really want to be breaking down that door anyway. So I would say that there's a lot more people who are willing to listen now, and a lot of is happening in the world of philanthropy and education, where people are more open in some spaces to hear some of the stuff that we've been saying for years and years. So yeah.
So helpful. I love, just thanks to all of you for talking through the questions you ask yourself, the way that you push yourself, the narrative that you have to create in your mind to stay grounded in who you are and to really see your authenticity as an asset, I think is a journey. And I think it's really real that the flip side of that journey is grappling with imposter syndrome, right? When you're constantly being told that you're not enough, that your skills and experiences aren't enough, when you don't see other models of people who look like you doing the work that you're doing, that imposter syndrome can seep in. How do you grapple with that? How do you navigate that as leaders?
I have one thing to say about the last question that I forgot, but I think is important, which is that I actually find myself being the least authentic sometimes with parents, and in certain situations like that. I think with the work that I'm doing with working with queer youth, sometimes I have held back a little or not said something that I maybe normally would say, out of like the nuance of like the student that we're working with and the parent, and what the parent might be okay with, in order to make sure the student can still have access to the services that we're offering. So I will say that there is a level of that happens in my work, at least around like navigating how much I put forward about, the ethos of our organization as a whole. So that was one piece. And also I can start with imposter syndrome because I'm already talking enough. Yeah. So yeah, I would say I've experienced imposter syndrome a lot
in my journey. And for me, it always goes back to the community of people that I'm working with and knowing that I don't do this alone. And that helps bring the imposter syndrome down a lot because it's not just me. And if I was under the impression that it was just me, or in the times that I have felt like that or isolated in some way, the imposter syndrome is so loud and so intense. And when I'm surrounded by people who want the same things in the world as me, that imposter syndrome goes down significantly.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Bre, because I think that that's like super transparent. I honestly, I think I struggle with the term imposter syndrome because I think I've had like, whoa, they let me do this syndrome, right? Like, but it's more like, oh, they let me be a high school principal. Jokes on them, right? Like, and maybe that was just like a little bit of self-doubt, right? Like when I brought my daughter, my newborn daughter home for the first time, I was like, oh, they let me bring this kid home by myself, right? Like the heck am I supposed to do? And it's more of that notion, like, okay, let's figure this out. I think for me, as I've learned how to operate authentically and bring my real self to situations, that has like helped me to navigate spaces where I'm like, if I didn't belong here, then I want to be here, right? And there was this notion, there was this one time when I got hired actually as a high school principal when a teacher, a woman of color, flat out told me, she was like, you were only hired because you're a woman of color, and a woman of color should never replace a white man in this society, right? And I was like, don't punch her, don't punch her. Did she really just say that? Like, or did I hear that, right? And I think that that was like this piece of something trying to like put this imposter syndrome on me. And it hurt more because I was like, for real, you're gonna say that to somebody? But then after reflecting on it, I was like, that's infuriating, right? That somebody would say that to somebody else. And don't you dare try to get me down, because now watch me, right? And I think that that's where, in times where I may have felt inadequate to do something, I use that moment even as like this catalyst of like, I wouldn't be here if I couldn't do this.
Yeah, just to, gosh, thank you, Amanda, for sharing that. Because I think with me too, it's just the definition of it, right? The nature of imposter syndrome. I mean, I think of it just as a Black man, as a trap, right? Like as a delaying tactic to delay the process, for people like us to get there, quick, right? Like it's always when you have that momentum, right? Then it's like, boom, right? And it's real, right? Yeah, that trap, and I always often think about as a Black man and just Black men, in the history of America, how we've been always been chased, like there's always something to get us, right? And then I think of being as an entrepreneur, like, those traps, they show up like this, like as an imposter syndrome. It's something that you have to navigate as you're delaying the process. And what has helped with me really is back to the community, like knowing that there are people that are there for me. I mean, I think of like Moonshot, fellowship like Moonshot, where you're given permission to be this leader. So they're always looking after you, like, remember, you got this, you have to do this. So being able to have really those people within you to be able to, like what Bre is saying, when to show up authentically, like, what, I am just, right now I'm having a hard time. Then they're there to like, yes, you are having a hard time, but guess what? This is real. You the person to do this real thing. So I really think of it as a trap. And I've been shifting my mind to think of it that way, so that I know when it shows up, like I'm being trapped in.
Yeah, like the concept of it almost being a trap. I think I almost had like the opposite reaction. So like Amanda, like when you tell me I can't do something, I want to do it more, and I'm like, watch this, like I'm gonna go, like that's probably the word. Like if you don't want me to do something, the worst thing you probably could tell me is like you can't, or you shouldn't. But the opposite was true, right? Like, we've been told consistently that like our authentic selves would be rejected. And then when you go some full force, and then like all of a sudden you're getting all this love, it's like you spent so much time fighting that you don't even know what it means. Like you could trick yourself into almost like fighting against yourself. Does that make sense? I equate it to like if you're moving and like you're expecting this box to be super heavy, and then like you lift it up, you almost like throw your back out because it was lighter than you anticipated. It feels like that sometimes. And one of like the lyrics I like the most is by J. Cole, where he's talking about just kind of what it means to progress. And he talks about like, you know, the good news is you came a long way. The bad news is you went the wrong way. And like, that's the thing that is consistently in the back of my mind, which is why that connection to the people you're looking to serve, like regrounding yourself in terms of like what that purpose is, and like have people that really know you, that will tell you if you're off beat, or if you're switching up, or that doesn't seem to really align to what you say you're about. You're required to look in that mirror. And so like, I also kind of reject this notion that like we shouldn't have a chip on our shoulder. Like I've fed myself off that chip on my shoulder for so long. So what does it mean to like put it down? And I get the intention of saying like, hey, it's not always a battle, but like it is. And there's so many different things you're battling, both internally and externally. So when you catch those breaks though, like when you're throwing that punch, just make sure that you know what you're trying to hit. Because you might mess around and like throw out your shoulder, swing in the air, and then hurting yourself. So it's been an interesting dynamic and progression for me.
So many nods that whole time. I want to kind of keep talking about this idea. Well, first, I love that all of you are bringing up the fact that like imposter syndrome, it's a tactic. It's not a part of our identity, which I think is so easy to just tack that on, especially for diverse leaders, right? And to say like, oh, it's imposter syndrome, that's the barrier. And so appreciate you all kind of like calling out the system itself. I have one more question before I want to kind of open it up to the audience to see if the audience has any questions. But I think that you've all kind of talked about this idea of like leaning on your community. And I'd love for us to just kind of close out by talking about how have you disrupted power and the systems that we currently live in through grounding yourself in community? Like, what has that looked like for you? Where have you really seen systems disrupted because of a collective network of people that are working to change the whole system versus just working in a really individualistic way? Like seeing wheels are turning.
Wow, that's a tough one, Sasha. Disrupting power, my gosh. I just, I'm gonna go back to Moonshot as my community for this work, right? Where I think I got the permission to do this work because I didn't know that I had this permission to actually, get out there and, start a school, start a program, be innovative, think deep, and like reflect on lessons learned and creating, based on design that's co-created with the community. I think, and again, I think the idea of co-designing, if I can say grounded in community, I think that to me is how I'm being able to like disrupt power, where I'm not just coming up with this myself. I think of the Montessori on Wheels, it had Bre, it had a lot of people in it. It was like thinking out loud and then having all these people like then thinking with me, then, saying back to me. So I think really thinking about innovation and designing, just not one person, entitled to like come and serve the community, come and bring something new, but like this is coming from us and back to us. So the idea of like, by community for the community, that kind of design, but really honoring like this didn't even come from me. If it did, I just thought of it a lot. And then there were people who were able to like, saw it back and, water the idea.
Yeah, I'd say, I think the first step is like being able to have the tools and the mindset of understanding how power works in the first place. A lot of it isn't that different, right? Like when you get into certain spaces, you realize it's kind of the same thing wherever you go. It just kind of manifests and looks and maybe feels a little bit different. But at the end of the day, like human beings are human beings and they operate in a particular way. And once you're able to like tell somebody that didn't think that like they had a voice, and like, those school board members, they work for you, dog. Like the superintendent works for you. Like full stop. They work for the collective community. And once you understand and have like a significant enough of a voice, and that comes with a responsibility. And so like, as our big thing at Ednium is we don't throw stones without laying bricks. We're going to know what it is we actually want to get out of this, as opposed to just yelling and screaming. I'm less interested in you liking me or less interested in you accepting me into your club and more interested in the outcome that's going to produce for the community we're trying to serve. And I think that's where we get twisted up sometimes is we're searching for this system that intentionally was built to block us out. And we're spending our time to get it to accept us, as opposed to understanding how it works and then being very intentional and tactical. And what you find is at the end of the day, when you're able to show progress, when you're able to show traction, when you're able to demonstrate that when we talked to each other and something actually happened as a result of what you said in that meeting 6 months ago, all of a sudden that person's willing to speak up just a little bit more. That might happen at work. Now all of a sudden that person has 1 or 2 different people that they can call on. They know, how systems work. They know who makes what decisions. And so much of it was this information was hidden from us. And we're yelling at the wrong thing, or we're upset at the wrong thing. And we're fighting to get somebody who doesn't have the actual decision-making power to change something for us. Once you figure that out, and once you get a particular threshold and a collective of people who have a shared positive vision for what that can be, it's almost undeniable. It's undeniable.
I want to add to that, yeah, because I'm thinking of that like in terms of like our education system was not created for innovation or disruption, right? It was created to prepare people for labor. And so me being an entrepreneur within this education system, like disruption for me is a daily focus, but I have to remind myself that disruption isn't going to come on this huge, massive scale. Like I keep waiting, like maybe Friday it'll dismantle, right? Like that's not real. It has to come one small piece at a time. And in a lot of ways, we're just planting seeds that might not come to fruition for the next 7 generations. And so even within starting an innovative school that within the system that does not share the same purpose or long-term vision, is hard because we're being held accountable for things that aren't necessarily aligned with my cultural beliefs, with the cultural beliefs of those that I serve. And so for me and others, like we're trying to navigate the system without being corrupted by it so that we can dismantle it from within. And I think what has been so powerful is that I know that I'm not alone. Like these other panelists are disrupting, and it's dope to be in this space with them. And I think that that's where even like Moonshot, if it wasn't for me, for Moonshot, like I'd probably still kind of be patty cake and trying to make these little tweaks. I definitely would be trying to start a whole new innovative school, right? And so that's where I've seen disruption even within you all. And I love y'all for it.
You all are so incredible. I know we have 1 minute left, so super quick, we're gonna popcorn around. If you had one piece of advice that you could share with the entrepreneurs and leaders, people who want to be entrepreneurs in this room, what would you say? Tatenda, kick us off.
Do it. Do it. It's just that, that's what my mom said. That's what Moonshot said. Do it. Because I think we spend more time thinking about it. Just do it.
As you do it, just blow their minds.
I would say invest in your joy and try to not get stuck in the binary thinking of the way systems have always been. The disruption happens in truly taking care of yourself and being revolutionary about how you care and show up in community. That'll mess it up every time.
You're gonna fail at some point. There's gonna be something you mess up. Don't be afraid of that, and everything else kind of takes care of itself.
Thank you to each of our panelists for sharing your wisdom and experiences and just being real. I so appreciate you all taking the time in our audience to be with us today. When my computer loads, you'll see our website, as well as our Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My email is also at the bottom. If you have any questions about the work that we do, don't hesitate to reach out. We're always looking to grow the Moonshot family. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Hey, Sash, quick question. Can you show the second problem side for Elisa, who just wanted to catch the notes at the very end?
Definitely. Thank you for flagging that. Is this the right one?
Yep, that's perfect.
Awesome.
Sasha, we get to bounce that song.
Yeah, y'all are good to go, and you're all incredible. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, bye, TeRay.
Peace.